This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, what's up? Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with Sean Anderson.
Hello.
Sean's like, how can I say this?
I don't know what to do.
The most unconfident way possible. But we are back for the primetime podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast, our draft/college sports podcast. And boy, do we have a dandy of a show for you. Going to be talking a lot of draft, then we're going to be talking some college football because Sean threw out a great topic of what teams are going to surprise us in 2019.
And the thing is, too, is like the draft is great. The draft is really important.
We're kind of in that no man's land where we're kind of far away.
It's fucking July. There is nothing to talk about because we don't know anything yet about the teams that are going to be drafting. We don't know anything about the prospects. We haven't seen them play. It is a tough time for a draft podcast. So let's just talk about the teams that they're playing for.
All right, next week we could do a way too early big board like Dave and I did for the NBA.
What if we do like 7 way too early big boards? Just like each week is a new big board and nothing changes it, but we just move guys around aimlessly.
I mean, that's how I feel with basketball. Like LaMelo Ball, #1, then he may be, not even in the top 10 the next week.
Yeah, you should honestly just never put him back. If you had him as your #1 prospect,
I had him #1.
Don't put him in your top 25 ever again.
Because I said on the podcast, LeVar Ball, remember who put LaMelo #1 in the way too earlys. Like, who was the one?
What, do you want a favor from LeVar Ball?
I just want to be I think it'd be cool to be mentioned by LeVar Ball in like FS1.
The dude has not done anything. He's not like a professional. He's not like a Hall of Famer.
To get my name mentioned on FS1 because he's not going to be welcome back on ESPN would be pretty cool.
Ew! I can't wait to get my name mentioned on FS1. The fuck is wrong with you?
Where else is LeVar Ball going to like? It's going to be the Herd. That's where he's going to be going.
Yikes!
Now that ESPN won't have him on.
A very odd dream.
But like I said, we got a jam.
Some people want to be fulfilled in their career. Some people want a family with 3 children, a nice house, and Ricky just wants to be mentioned on the Herd
not many
on
of us.
FS1 by LeVar Ball.
Not many of us could be Sean Anderson and have our voice featured in the NBA awards on TV.
Hey, I knew a couple guys, and I still don't know who their names yet.
But we got a jam-packed show for you guys. Going to be talking about Jerry Jeudy. Should he be or will he be a top 3 pick this upcoming year? Then the magical topic of who's going to tank for Tua Tagovailoa, or should teams tank for Tua this year? And then the topic Sean threw out that I can't wait to get to of which teams in college football are going to surprise us this upcoming year. But let's start with Jerry Jeudy because this is a topic that I have just been like, I think about randomly this offseason because if you look at big boards and you look at mock drafts now, there's usually 4 guys that are in the top 4. There are Tua, Jake Fromm, Jerry Jeudy, and then Chase Young, the defensive end out of Ohio State. And last night, because I couldn't sleep, I was like, okay, this is going to be a topic. And I went back through 10 years of drafts. And we're like,
it's a very Sean Anderson thing to do.
Which quarterbacks? It was a very Sean Anderson thing to do. I'm like, which wide receivers have been taken in the top 10? And since 2009, here are all the wide receivers taken in the top 10. We had 3 in 2017, Corey Davis, Mike Williams, John Ross. They were 5, 7, and 9, respectively.
Mike Williams is the best.
2015, we had 2. We had Amari Cooper at 4, Kevin White at 7.
Ugh.
Then in 2014, we had 2, Sammy Watkins at 4, Mike Evans at 7.
Yeah.
In 2013, we had 1, Tavon Austin, who was 8th overall.
Ew.
2012, we had 1, Justin Blackmon,
Yikes.
4th overall.
Yikes.
To the Jaguars that year.
That's bad.
2011, we had 2, AJ Green at 4, Julio Jones at 6.
That's a fuck up by the Bengals.
And then in 2009, we had Darius Hayward Bay at 7.
He was fast.
And then Michael Crabtree at 10. So we had that is a total of 13 wide receivers taken in the top 10. The last wide receiver taken in the top 3 was 2007. Calvin Johnson. He was taken 2nd overall. And the thing that I was looking at is Jerry Jeudy, his stats from last year, just over 1,300 yards. I want to say 14 receiving touchdowns last year.
You'd be right.
Were very, very close. I believe he was like a few yards shy and 1 touchdown shy of Calvin Johnson in the junior year that Calvin Johnson had before he came out. So, I mean, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, should he be a top 3 pick? If he has another year like he did last year, absolutely. But because of the quarterbacks we have, Tua, Jake Fromm, Justin Herbert, because Chase Young, if he's phenomenal, and like what his teammates are saying, where they're on the record saying he's going to be better than Myles Garrett, who went number 1 in the draft, it might be hard for Jerry Jeudy to be a top 3 pick.
Well, and to correct you on the Calvin Johnson thing, in Calvin Johnson's junior year, he had 76 receptions, which was less than Jerry Jeudy's sophomore year. Or, sorry, more than Jerry Jeudy's sophomore year. Jerry Jeudy had 68. Jeudy had more yards. Calvin was at 1,200. Jeudy was at 1,300. He did have more touchdowns Calvin Johnson, though, at 15 compared to Judy's 14. But an insane, 19 yards a catch for Jeudy, where Calvin Johnson was at 15.8. But I don't think the stats really matter, because to answer your question, and it's the reason why I don't think Jerry Jeudy will go in the top 3, who is Jerry Jeudy's quarterback?
Tua.
Who is Calvin Johnson's quarterback in 2006?
Could not name you his quarterback.
Exactly. That's the point. Is the quarterback is so important nowadays, and it doesn't matter who Calvin Johnson's quarterback was, because Calvin Johnson was a transcendent talent. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But Calvin Johnson put up nearly similar stats with a much worse quarterback named Reggie Bell, or do you want his backup, Taylor Bennett? He wasn't dealing with the best quarterbacks out there, and still had a phenomenal junior season where, Jerry Jeudy, who is still a phenomenal talent, I think still a top 10 player, but you're dealing with a guy who has a most likely number 1 overall pick throwing to him. So Jerry Jeudy, it's intrinsically easier for him to put up those stats because of the talent that he's dealing with on that whole Alabama team, outside of the quarterback even said. I mean, he's still got great weapons on the outside. They have a great offensive line, and they still have the ability to run the ball. I mean, you were just dealing with Josh Jacobs, a first-round pick last year. So he was a part of a very well-run offense. And Jerry Jeudy, again, is phenomenal, putting up 1,300 yards in your sophomore year and 15 touchdowns and over 19 yards a catch is ridiculously insane. And he is a phenomenal talent, and I think he's going to be a pretty good NFL pro. But what he doesn't have on his side is elite size, like Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, A.J. Green does. He's smaller than all those guys, both height-wise, about 2 inches smaller than Julio Jones coming out. And weight-wise, he's only 192 pounds. So that side is hurting him. And also, like you said, I mean, there's 3 quarterbacks that, Justin Herbert was most likely a number 1 pick if he came out this year. And then you have to go along with that Tua, who we just talked about, who looks like the guy. And then Jake Fromm as well, coming out of Georgia. So, there are 3 guys there that could just take over the top 3 spots. And you look at the teams that could need quarterbacks. Jacksonville, if Nick Foles doesn't work out. Miami, if no one's going to work out there. Maybe Rosen does, but I wouldn't be shocked if Rosen worked out there and they just traded him again. Bills could Bills can't. They just took what's his face. I don't know, Vikings, Giants again, because I think Daniel Jones is going to suck.
The Bengals.
There you go, Bengals. So right there, the 3 actual teams: Jacksonville, Miami, and the Bengals. Those 3 teams could all take quarterbacks.
Well, you look at it too, and of course, I'm going to use Tankathon as the example here, because yet again, we don't know where these teams are going to end up. Right now, the top 5 on Tankathon is Miami at 1, Cincy at 2, Arizona, New York Giants, and then Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Or the Bucs could be 1 too.
The Bucs, Bengals, and Miami, they all have quarterbacks going to those. They have Jerry Jeudy right now at 3 to the Arizona Cardinals, where I'm like, okay, I could see Larry Fitzgerald retiring, Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella. Neither of those 2 guys scream number 1. But to me, the big thing that I looked at when it came to most of those guys that were drafted in the top 10, most of those guys were either 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". And most of them were 200 pounds plus when it came to their size on the field. And with Jerry Jeudy, it's I don't want to put him in a box and say, oh, because you're 6'1", 193, you're not going to be able to be anything in the NFL. No, that'd be preposterous for me to say. But the thought that I had last night and I don't know if this is a good thought, I don't know if it's a bad thought, I was watching his highlights, and to me it was like, okay, of course he's got the big arm of Tua, but it was a lot of he either ran himself open, and then after he got the ball, what he was able to do with his speed, and then that juke move. Like, he's got that one step that is able to throw defenders, and then he's able to go around them. Or it was just, hey, I'm going to beat you off the line, and Tua's going to put the ball in the exact situation that it needs to be in, or the exact spot it needs to be for me to make the catch. And I paused it halfway through, and I'm like, I've seen this before. Like, I feel like I'm watching somebody that I've already seen in the NFL. I pulled up Julian Edelman's tape, and it looks nearly similar. The only thing that I would say is maybe Jerry Jeudy will be more athletic than Julian Edelman. But I
won't argue on that one.
But it's like the routes, the catching, I'm like, I mean, he's 3 inches taller than Julian Edelman, but it's like
Jules is 5'11".
The routes that they run, the way the quarterback throws them open, I'm like, hey, maybe he's a Julian Edelman type of receiver because he's only 6'1", about 290, 292, 293.
Yeah, I don't want to bash Julian either. I mean, obviously I'm a Patriot fan. And he was obviously so great for us. Mm-hmm. And Julian is extremely athletic. I mean, he was a former college quarterback. Mm-hmm. Has great speed over the middle, and obviously worked himself into a great position in his NFL career. I don't know if I see necessarily Julian Edelman though, because a huge thing about that is taking hits hard over the middle and putting yourself on the line. And I didn't see Jerry Jeudy do that a ton in Alabama, just mainly because he wasn't put in that position because he was faster than everybody.
Yeah.
I honestly think he's kind of just a smaller version of Sammy Watkins. Okay. I think you see that speed, and I mean, I think it was clocked that he ran a 4.47 at their it wasn't their combine day, but it was an Alabama day, which isn't like, blazing top notch speed, but it is fairly elite. Mm-hmm. And I think the big thing that will help him, I think he's got very fluid hips, and I think he'll be able to make nice cuts and breaking out of it, and I think he can get up to that top speed fairly quickly. So I think Jeudy, while he might not be, Tavon Austin quick, I think he will still be able to have NFL speed and NFL agility. I just don't know if he's got the size to be a top 3 pick, and I think that's what it really comes down to. And getting into that, the guys that you were mentioning that are now elite wide receivers and what they had going for them that were taken in the top 10 in the past 10 years, the 13 guys. The guys that I'm taking from, probably Amari Cooper. I didn't use Mike Evans, but Mike Evans definitely. AJ Green, Julio Jones, and then obviously I took in Calvin. And you look at Julio Jones, he came out 6'3", 220 out of Alabama. And you look at what he did. A cone drill, 3-cone drill, 6.66. He had a 4.2 20-yard shuttle, a 11-second 60-yard shuttle, a 38 vert, and then a 4.3 40, where we just talked about Jeudy being a 4.47. He could obviously get higher. He can do have a better time. But Calvin Johnson is the one too. Like, if we're talking about top 3 picks, he probably should have been the number 1 pick, but no one wanted to take a wide receiver at number 1, which is fair. But he was 6'5", 237, which is much bigger than Jerry Jeudy, and he ran a 4.3. Calvin Johnson was a goddamn freak. Like, that's insane. Jeudy isn't that. And then you look at AJ Green, a guy, again, another SEC guy, 6'4", 210. So very similar, at least weight-wise. I mean, AJ Green wasn't big at all. He still has about 18 pounds, I think, on Jerry Jeudy at 210. But his 40 was that was his 20. His 40 was 4.5. So that's more similar to Jeudy there. But he had a pretty decent 20-yard shuttle. It was a 4.21, and then the 60 was an 11.4. So he was a little bit slower than Julio Jones at that point. Julio Jones had a better combine, and Julio Jones also had a better career. And then I think the last person is Amari Cooper. Cooper had a 4.42 40-yard dash and a 6.7 cone drill. So he was a little bit faster than what Jeudy is now, and looking at the height, he is similar to Jeudy at 6'1", but he came weighing in at 211. So I think the biggest thing that Jeudy's going to need to work on is if he does want to be a top 3 pick, and if he does want to be that upper echelon, he's got to work on that speed just to make sure that top speed is as fast as possible, because I think he does have great acceleration. And I think adding weight will be huge for Jeudy, because right now he's not getting hit because he's faster than everybody. But what is he going to do at the next level, getting hit, going over the middle, if that is going to be his position in the slot, which I don't think it will be. I think he'll be an outside guy. What is he at that position? And if he is getting hit, how will he be able to take it? How will his body hold up? Because that will be the biggest concern that I have.
The thing that I also am looking at is two things. First off, a little trivia for you guys. The other wide receiver that was taken in the top 3, other than Calvin Johnson, was in the 2005 draft, wide receiver out of Michigan, a Mr. Braylon Edwards. And when he came out, he was a 4-year guy at Michigan. His last year had 1,330, so 1,330 yards, third straight season of over 1,000 yards, and he had 15 touchdowns on 97 receptions. But at that 2000 combine, his 40-yard dash was a 4.36. And looking at this past NFL combine that happened, if Jerry Jeudy ran the 4.47 that you said, there would have been 14 guys that ran a quicker 40 than him, and he would have had the same exact 40 time as Jalen Smith, wideout from Louisville. So to me, it's like what I see on the tape is a really good wide receiver, especially, like I said, that juke move or that stab that he's got with that first step is absolutely killer. But there are so many other wide receivers that are going to be really good this year. The ones I look at is like Laviska Shenault, who is a junior entering his junior year with Colorado, 6'2", 220, had just shy of 1,200 yards last year, only 6 touchdowns. He also rushes the ball as well. The guy who I think could overtake Jeudy as the number 1 wide receiver with a really good year with ex-Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts is CeeDee Lamb. 6'2", 189 might be a little thin, but he's a guy that almost had 2,000. Like, I know he plays for Oklahoma. I know he plays in the Big 12, and they're just air raid offenses and throw the ball all day, but almost 2,000 yards on the season, 111 receptions, had 18 touchdowns last year. And then you got guys like T. Higgins, who is going to be coming back for his junior season. He's going to play with Trevor Lawrence, which is a really good quarterback. And then Colin Johnson also, who's a 6'6" monster out there for the Texas Longhorns, 6'6", 220. So it's like, I'm not saying that all these guys obviously are going to overtake Jerry Jeudy. Like, I expect Jerry Jeudy to be the top, if not the second best wide receiver at the end of this whole draft process. But to me, it also comes to, if you're going to be a top 3 guy in this draft, you're going to either need exceptional height, so you need to be like 6'4", 6'5", and be able to go up and get the ball, or you're just going to need to be a guy that's like, oh, I'm a 4.3 40, if not quicker than that, which 4.3 is really quick. So it's like, I'm not expecting him to run much quicker, but you need to be a 4.3 guy if I'm going to take you top 3 over a Tua, over a Jake Fromm, or even over a Chase Young, who I think is criminally low right now on many mock drafts and big boards.
Yeah, I agree with you on CeeDee Lamb. Watching him last year was insane. I thought he would look better than Hollywood Brown at points, and you obviously look at the last 2 games, and he balled out, especially that Texas game. That Texas game was an absolute coming-out game. He was impressive, and you talked about being in that offense, but that really doesn't matter to me anymore, because a lot of NFL offenses are just going that way.
Yeah.
So if you can play, you can play.
Kansas City.
Yeah, if you can play, you can play. I mean, natural speed, natural gift, natural ability is going to win out no matter what. It's just, does CeeDee Lamb have more natural gift and more natural ability than Jerry Jeudy? And obviously, we're going to have to see that whole year play out. In the end, I don't think either will be top 3 level. I think you mentioned, obviously, the 4 guys that you think are going to be up there. I think clearly we're going to have at least 2 quarterbacks in the top 3.
Yeah.
That's just natural, especially with the teams that do need them, especially looking at the Florida teams in Miami and Tampa Bay. I think those teams are probably going to stick out like a sore thumb, and that's going to be what we're going to be looking at is probably Tua going number 1 or number 2, depending on what kind of year he does have. I think there are pretty decent arguments to be made for Jake Fromm to be number 1, or even Justin Herbert or Jacob Eason, if Eason has a great year in Washington. I would probably rank them going into this year, though, as Tua, Fromm, Herbert, and then Eason at 4.
Yeah.
And I think at least 2 of those guys are going to be top 3. And then it's really going to be dependent on, does this team have a quarterback already? And, do the Jets already have, I would think the Jets would be a team that would probably go wide receiver because they already have a great defense. Their defense is pretty top-notch. They already have a star in Jamal Adams. They have a pretty good linebacking core. They have a good front line. And then you look at their running back situation, they just signed Le'Veon Bell. So if the Jets are bad, I think that's where you might look because you still have Sam Darnold. You need to get him a weapon. Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb, whoever is the best wide receiver, that might come out. But I think you really need to have a perfect storm like that to even get a top 3 wide receiver considered, let alone that actually becoming reality. They're all talented, without a doubt. And I think both of them are probably going to be top 10 picks. But that is such a high value to take a player there unless he is a Calvin Johnson. Yeah. That's why he worked out, because it was so clear that he was going to work out at 6'5", 4.35 speed and with that jumping ability.
Obviously the best. He's
the best wide receiver I've ever seen.
To where it's like when he retired, it was like, well, great. What do the Lions do now?
Yeah, he was I didn't see Moss in his prime. I saw 2007 Moss. Yeah, but I would take Calvin Johnson. That Megatron. Over Randy Moss in 2007.
The thing that helped Randy Moss too was having a guy like Chris Carter next to him, having both.
2007. I didn't see that.
I'm saying
Moss. But I didn't see
with
that
me growing up in that that obviously helped him in those years.
Well, and that
was the greatest duo I've ever seen.
And the other thing that helped him too in 2007 was having the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady.
Yeah.
But yeah, Megatron, you look at that 2012 year, unstoppable. And he only had 5 touchdowns that year. But he had nearly 2,000 yards receiving, which makes 0 sense. But he was a guy that you could just throw the ball up to, and he'd come down with it. I remember the Cowboys game it was yesterday. That was one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. But yeah, I don't think there's a Calvin Johnson out there. And even the guys that have been great, like Julio Jones and A.J. Green, they still deal with a lot of injuries. And that's something that you're going to have to deal with at a position taking so much physicality. And with how much you pass, that's going to be a worry and a concern. So I think clearly quarterback is the number 1 need. And then after that, looking for a impact defensive player will probably be taking more need over a wide receiver.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is last thing I'll say is I even think, let's say Miami and Cincinnati are not 1-2, even if a team like the Cardinals, if a team like the Giants, a team that doesn't need a quarterback is 1-2, they are going to trade out of that in order to get a team. A team is going to trade up for a quarterback, and I just also think that the big thing is, like I said, Chase Young, who last year had about 14.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks in 13 games. He's a guy that could really surprise us this year. So, for me, if I had to give my top 3 in no particular order, I think Tua, Fromm, and Chase Young are going to be in the top 3. Last thing I will ask you is, are you on board with that? Would that be your top 3? And then is Jeudy a top 5 pick? That's the last thing we'll say. Because I think he could be a top 5 pick, but won't be a top 3 pick.
I will answer that one first, the top 5 pick. I think that it's going to be majorly dependent on the teams and how they play out.
Yeah.
If he was a top 5 pick, I wouldn't be shocked, but I will, and I'll say that he is. I think he'll end up coming out as a top 5 pick. The only way I see that he doesn't is that if someone overtakes him as the best college wide receiver.
Yeah.
But right now, I would say that he is. And the other one is it top 3 wide receivers or is it top 3?
Just top 3 in general.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Then,
what would you think would be the top 3 picks in no particular order?
I would say Tua, number 1. Obviously, it's team dependent, but I would say if it's a team that needs a quarterback,
someone's trading up for him at 1.
Yeah, I would say that it's going to be Tua. Then I will put Fromm because I think he is fantastic. I think that he is a natural NFL QB, and I think that teams would be honestly probably stupid to not go after him. I think that he is more of a complete package than a Justin Herbert. I wasn't too much in love with Justin Herbert. Just most people thought he was going to go number 1, but it wasn't that great of a that great of a draft last year anyway. I don't think another quarterback goes up there, so I wouldn't be shocked if the tackle from Georgia, Andrew Thomas, goes high just due to the natural ability of him, and then also just what teams want to do with their quarterbacks, and that's protect them. So if a team like the Jets are up there and they see, do we take a wide receiver or a tackle? I think tackle could also win out just to protect your guy in Sam Darnold. But outside of that, I would probably say it's either Chase Young
or Andrew Thomas.
I would say Thomas, Young, or Raekwon Davis.
Okay. Those 3 all vying for that number 3 spot.
I would say, watching what Davis did last year, I'd probably put Davis at 3.
Okay.
So Tua, Fromm, Raekwon Davis.
Okay.
And then I think Jeudy could definitely fight for the 4 or 5 spot. Because I'm not sold on any of them. I'm not sold on, for sure, Thomas being the guy at 4 or Chase Young being the guy at 4 or whatever. And Chase Young could obviously move up too. And I mean, I don't get the whole Myles Garrett thing. Did any of those guys play with Myles Garrett?
No, it was just one of his teammates was asked, and he was like, "Yeah, I think he'll be better than Myles Garrett."
Okay, dude, what do you know about Myles Garrett? I don't know. That annoys me. But yeah, I'm not buying into that hype. But at least obviously seeing how they play out, I would go with that top 3 though. Okay. Tua, Fromm, Raekwon Davis.
Yeah, I just think that the biggest thing is when you look at like the past drafts, teams are not. Unless you are like, holy shit, we need to take you top 3. Most of those wide receivers like Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins, Justin Blackmon, who were top wide receivers in their time in college, 4th overall. It's like just not cracking that top 3, except for like Calvin Johnson and Braylon Edwards. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. Would you take Jerry Jeudy top 3? Do you think he's going to be top 3? If not, is he a top 5? Is he a top 10? Is he not even the top wide receiver at the end of this year? Is it a CeeDee Lamb? Is it the wide receiver out of Colorado? Is it somebody else that overtakes him? Let us know what you guys think down below.